Okay, guys, here we go. So, right, Tim and I are back, and
Hello.
we don't have an official name for our series of chats, but we're going to continue to do them. Well, I hope we are. We haven't discussed it yet. We haven't had a proper fallout yet. We haven't had a proper fallout yet. But Tim and I are going to have regular conversations, and this episode is about Panerai. We've talked a lot about Panerai. And we think that it's a really, really interesting subject right now. We're going into Watches and Wonders. By the time this goes live, it will be post Watches and Wonders. I'm not sure that changes things necessarily, but we wanted to just talk broadly about the brand and where we are with Panerai, where we've been, and maybe a little bit about where we're going.
Yeah.
I told you, Tim, to bring a watch or two from Panerai. You've bought more than a watch or two.
I've bought half the shop. But that's okay.
The camera's setup will not allow for
a little caveat on this. If you're expecting me to remember PAM numbers, I'm not going to be. I can describe, case sizes and things like that. And obviously, I know the sort of four key model lines being submersible, Luminor, Radiomir, and the Duet.
So, don't be silly. Don't be silly. Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. What you guys can't see at home is that Tim's literally laid out this spread on the sofa, which we're going to bring out piece by piece. And this is going to be like less than 20 minutes. We're not going to go bonkers about this, but let's start with just an overarching sense of the history. We're not going to go into the full history of the brand. Yeah. Apart from to say, it was my first watch, PAM 111, sandwich dial, 44mm, steel case, bought it from
44.
Watchfinder.
Okay.
44.
Big one.
Yeah. Traditional, absolutely hand-wound.
Mid-size for Panerai.
Mid-size, it is a mid-size. Hand-wound caliber, big, completely legit, what you would want from Panerai.
Sapphire case back.
Sapphire case back.
Nice.
Hand-wound caliber, a workhorse caliber.
Yeah.
Nothing more than that. And I think it's worth saying, for those who don't know, the charm of the brand was the era in which Rolex supplied cases and movements to Panerai for the Italian Navy, the diving squads. In an interesting time in history. We don't need to dive into that, pardon the pun.
Yeah.
We don't need to, but an interesting time in history. And they were absolutely built for a purpose. They were the quintessential tool watch.
Yes, they were.
Those models have not necessarily picked up at auction and in the secondary market. When they come up, those very important models have been slightly diminished by some Italian friends who've copied and messed around. And the trust in some of those early Panerai, those Rolex cases, was it Brevet? Was it Brevet or Brevet? I can't even remember that.
Oh, Brevet, I think.
Brevet, yeah, steel case, Rolex case. Not often signed, not always signed by Rolex.
No.
But as a result, there have been sort of Frankenstein watches and forgeries and other things. Full to the brim of charm, but Italian in the best possible way.
Lovingly executed.
Yeah. And then 1997, the brand was acquired by Richemont, Vendôme at the time.
Yeah.
And Mr. Bonatti was the CEO. In many ways, he was the encapsulation of Panerai.
Yeah.
Tanned up to the gills. Perma-tanned up to the gills.
It's the only way to be, really.
And there was an image of him on Eileen, which is the yacht that Panerai owns and had restored lovingly for many years. And you've got two models. And we'll come to the challenges and the opportunities that there are, because there aren't many brands that have two models that. I mean, could you consider the Radiomir iconic? I mean, the word I'm reticent to use iconic, but the Luminor is iconic. Do we agree that the Luminor is iconic?
Yeah, we do. Somewhere between the Luminor and the submersible, they're icons.
That's interesting, because I don't consider, when I think of the submersible, for me it is sort of like, it's a line extension. It's not a model that stands on its own two legs.
Well, what I like about it is that it sort of doubles down on the toolness. You've got the more robust cases. You've got the rotating bezels, all of that stuff, and I want to talk about the Bronzo. That's an important watch for me, and that's in the submersible line.
But the challenge, and we Tim shared with me before we started recording this a great episode for anyone out there who wants to dive even deeper into the history of Panerai. Can't remember the name of the channel, but there's a YouTube channel.
Watch Chronicler.
Watch Chronicler. British chap.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Actually not British, no.
Is he not British?
He sounds very British, doesn't
he? But he's not.
No,
he must be educated here.
Yeah.
Very well spoken.
Lovely chap.
Great episode on Panerai. And the sort of challenges that it's faced, because we've got a tool watchmaker with great history, military links. We've got 2 models, because the submersible wasn't one that was 1997. We got the Radomir and the Luminor in 1997. We didn't have the Due. We had those 2 models, and we had a tool watch story.
Yes.
And so the challenge for the brand has been, and it really had a few years of great success. We had the sort of the era of which the Marvel superheroes were all wearing Panerai, privately and on set.
Yeah, Stallone was the big
Stallone was the man that pushed it, and the visuals of Illuminor, just the simple visuals of the crown lock, the size, the proportions, it's all there. But in the last few years, it's faced challenges. It's faced challenges with the fact that it's only got these 2 / the submersible / the Due themes and a very, very specific sort of tool watch approach.
Yeah.
So where do we go? Because we're at a point now where I feel like last couple of years have been challenging.
Yeah.
We're now at a point where I know you disagree with me here, because we've spoken about this elsewhere.
Oh, you're going
but I believe that we've got some not we're not going back to the old 2000 mark, which was probably the peak, or that period of time, the big watch peak. But I do think people are going to have found the confidence now to say, okay, I'm no longer we're not speculating on the market anymore. We're not flipping the market's not as sort of hot in the primary market as it once was a few years back. I'm going to buy for myself now. And I'm really going to double down on buying for myself. And so if I like a larger watch, then I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to get too bogged down in that.
Yeah.
Says a man who is wearing the smallest watch I own, this Cartier.
That's the smallest.
Century, just for you.
Obviously I'm Cartier.
You're Cartier through and through. But what do you reckon, Tibble? What is the answer here? Because what have Panerai been doing in these watches that we've got here? Because these are all fairly modern references.
Yes, they are.
And what do you see? Because you're on the side of speaking to people. You were just telling me before we started recording that a chap came in really fired up about changing a model out for another one, and he was over the moon.
Yeah. I mean, there is some degree of confusion when the real Paneristi collectors come to us, because on the surface, we've got people around the office that know, believe it or not, even less about Panerai than I do, and I know a little bit. I don't mean to talk myself down. I should back myself.
But there are just so many references. Let's be honest.
So many references.
So many references.
And there are some key characteristics. But when a Panerai collector trades in a Panerai for an equivalent size Panerai and is seemingly very excited about that transaction, it puzzles me. But I guess in the same way, changing a Kermit for a flat 4 Kermit, that is quite an exciting thing if they're rare and the conditions right and all of that. I do understand the depth. I don't mean to say that I am not in the depths of watch idiot savant-ness, because I am. I've been there. I've absolutely been there. But I sometimes struggle with the nuances in Panerai, and I want to talk about you've talked about sort of where that brand might go and where we think it might go, and I do want to dig into that, because for me, as someone who's not a Paneristi, I see real opportunities for that brand to evolve in a way that's perhaps targeting the wider market, as opposed to doubling, tripling down on those core, I think, few people, that narrow group of collectors.
How do they do that?
How
do they do that? How should they do that?
Well, that's the thing, right? And I think 4 years ago, I think they brought out the Due line, and this is the sort of what they would call a mid-size.
You've got one there, right?
Oh, we got two.
You got two.
Yeah. This is a 38mm Due executed in rose gold, and this was seemingly, I mean, I'm not on their strategy board, but I think this was a sort of way to get in on the movement and the trend towards smaller watches, but also to open up the market to the female audience. And I think that's where they've got the balance slightly wrong, because when I look at these watches, I see a somewhat half-hearted effort to reduce a case size and have done. And I don't think that's enough. I think that certainly on this one and others in the Duet line, I get really hung up on the use of different fonts. Like this one, I wish it didn't say automatic and different typeface at the bottom. It looks like someone's gone on Microsoft Paint and added some random bit of text, and that frustrates me because I love watches. I love the architecture of watches, and the architecture of Panerai is one that resonates with me. But when you see someone that cares less about it, it seems like a numbers thing. We'll just put out another brand and we'll stamp it differently and call it a Duet. The other part of this is that the Duet line, I think, landed with a quoted water resistance of 30 meters, yet it has all this elaborate case construction that makes you think it can go down to 1,000 meters under sea level.
I've got to say, I've seen that on women before in Italy. I've actually seen women in Italy wearing them.
Yeah.
And it's a nice look, I've got to say. It kind of irks the purist, right? The Paneristi, of course, I'm sure, I can't remember the outrage or not that there was when the Duet launched, but the fact that you're diluting what is its fundamental purpose. No one's taking it to 200 meters, no one's taking it to 300 meters, but the fact that it can do that is the reason we get excited about it.
Yeah, but not
and
with
it's been diluted, not with the Duet.
No,
and that's a problem.
I spoke to them about this a couple of years ago when they brought the Duet line out, and I was interested in it because I'm a man that prefers smaller watches, though probably my favourite Panerai is 42mm, and we'll talk about that in a moment. 7 minutes left. I'll hurry up. They say that the quoted 30 meters is an actual 30 meters. You can take that watch 30 meters underwater and it should be fine. And maybe that hasn't been explained very well in the press. It's certainly been misunderstood by people like me and others who have reviewed these watches and call that a big miss. So I do think the execution of that has been not perfect, and that's sad. You asked me what I think they should do. I do think that they should expand on their model line, and I've brought along a watch that I think, if I was CEO, this is what I would do. I'd take a smaller cushion size.
I think they've just appointed a new CEO, just to be clear. Mr. Jean-Marc Ponchereau has just left.
There you go.
Panerai, so you could have been in the running, but you didn't accept the offer.
Yeah, no, and they wouldn't want me. and that's okay.
But you're now pitching a new watch. Is this an entirely new shape, an entirely new design? Because that's what a lot of people have called for years, is the Code 1159 moment for Panerai.
No, and I get that. I do. I mean, that's a really bad example, though, eh?
Well, let's be clear. It's finding its feet slowly but surely.
Is it? No, I saw.
Go on. What's your watch? Pitch it to us.
So, right, and bear with me because there's some artistic. I don't know what.
I did see that, and I thought, is that
this is a 1921 Vacheron cushion case. And you know it because I've talked to you about it. It's the model actually that they rotated and created for the apparently the priest that liked to wear it on his inside of his wrist and use it for sermons to keep an eye on the time. This is the base model for that. So it's a beautiful cushion case with an enamel dial, and I think Vacheron absolutely killed it back then. And this kind of size and shape and playfulness is something that's absolutely coming back into vogue with Cartier, I know with Cartier, but other things, Chaumet, Piaget, playful, interesting shapes are having a big comeback. And I think the case shape on this is actually very reminiscent of the Radiomir. And I think if they were to execute it in a way that made it more dressy, that made it appeal to that that collector that likes something that's a small but big statement, small format, big punch and statement. That the Tyler, the creators of the world. I wouldn't say Kanye West, but you know what I mean.
Would you want? Would you have performance built in there as well?
Yes, I would.
You have depth,
absolutely, because I think that's one of the fundamental core values of that company.
Like a mini. Would you go mini? Like the Panther or the Royal Oak Mini? We're seeing minis everywhere. Would you go for a mini submersible with depth rating?
Yes. Because I love the idea that you've got something that you can wear from a dinner out, all the way through the day, swimming, diving, whatever, playing with the kids, and then taking to the dinner table, later that night and going out for a bit of a party, whatever.
Totally agree.
I love that idea, and I really think if there is, if you don't hide behind the fact that you're trying something new, you're stepping into a new area for the brand, I think it could be a real winner. I know I'd be really interested in that, but don't do it half-heartedly. Don't just put out a 30-meter water resistance dress.
So what are we talking? We're talking. This is 32 millimeters.
Yeah.
Are we talking, say, a 34 millimeter or 36? 34, maybe 36 millimeter.
Cushion cases wear much bigger because it's a square format. You look at a Tank Louis and it's 23 mil, and that wears perfect.
My 1921 I've got here actually is 40 millimeter, but wears probably like a 42 because of the shape.
Because of the shape, exactly. So I think you can get away with that, and with a bit of artistic license, I think it would work really, really well.
Okay.
But I also think you could probably get rid of a line. Another model line or two to make way for this. I think the Duet, I'd sacrifice. For me, it hasn't worked, and I wanted it to work because I like Panerai and I like smaller watches.
What has worked?
Well, the other watch that I think has worked in the past is this one here. I like, as we started off saying, Panerai is the tool watch. It has a purpose. You look at it and you know that it means business. And when they brought out the Bronzo, I think it was first in green and then blue and then brown, and they were all 47 millimeters. And that's that's a tool, of course, but you could see it from outer space, and I don't think you need to. Whereas after that, they did listen to collectors, and they are able to listen to collectors. And they bought out the Bronzo 42 millimeters with a blue dial. That is a watch that I did buy. I do like that enough to buy.
Can I have a quick look?
Yeah,
so
please do.
Was it limited edition? That
it's limited production. It's 1,000 pieces a year.
Oh,
yeah,
1,000 pieces a year.
And it comes with a couple of different straps. Yeah, it does all of that strap changing wonderfulness that Panerai is known for. But a bronze case works for a tool watch because when you subject it to the elements, particularly salt water, it oxidizes, and bronze cases, rather than deteriorating, that patina strengthens the case, but you get this wonderful character to it, and I love that. So for me, I'd be happy with that line.
Yep.
And I would be happy with a 1920s aesthetic, and then I'd be really happy with that. They're also a brand that are not afraid of experimenting with materials. We've got Carbotech here, we've got recycled steel. I think that's a bit of a I'm not sure. I mean,
what's the steel called? It had a name to it.
E-steel.
E-steel.
I mean, I used to work in structural engineering, and I mean, most steel work is recycled, so I don't really understand that. But anyway, it's all good. I think they could boil down the lines. They could really make the individual model lines stand out as individual products in their own right, not just different dials and slight differences, but real differences.
This 1950s style case, by the way, we can carry on for a little bit longer. It's just, I think this 1950s style case actually fits on the wrist beautifully. The way it's actually very thin.
I really like it.
It's actually really quite thin. I don't think you can ever say that. I don't think anyone would ever say that about Panerai. But this 1950s style case, sloping edges, really, really nice.
I think there is absolutely a time and a place for a tall watch that is big and aggressive in that design, and that's what that is. For me, it doesn't need to be 47. For some people, sliced alone, I'm sure
we're talking about legibility ultimately, and we're saying size equals legibility.
Yes, absolutely.
And we're not saying it needs to be. For me, that is very, very legible, especially if I'm underwater. I mean, we are talking about pools here. We're talking about light paddle into the shallows of the Caribbean, hopefully with the family. I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about anything else. No. The south of France with the rig out. Yeah. And actually, that is beautiful. I've got to say, that is absolutely beautiful.
It's my favourite in the current catalogue.
It's really, really nice.
By a long way.
Can I make a plea to the executives for the next chapter, for me, of going back to basics?
Yeah.
Because the brand doesn't talk, and this was made very clear in that other conversation that the chap did on Panerai, was it doesn't talk a lot about its base models, but the base models are actually what get people into the brand and actually what they do best, I think. We're talking steel, we're talking time only, hand wound. A great colleague of mine, Tracy Llewellyn, she editor of Revolution, she's now editor of the Telegraph Time. Yeah. Wonderful woman, almost a mentor of mine, and she references her base Luminor as the most important watch for her. Yeah. She's been in the industry for a couple decades, and she says that's her favorite and most important watch in all of watchmaking, which is really, really interesting. Wow. So I think go back to basics.
Yeah.
Let's get the basic models, the base models, as high performing as they can be and as true and as honest as they can be. Not in a sort of reissue style format, but just because this is a continuation of those early models and designs done really well. And let's talk about them more. Let's talk about the sort of military applications. There are a lot of brands out there with military heritage. Yeah. I'm just thinking about someone like IWC. We don't see them talking about that very often. They talk about performance, colours, style, cultural icons, not performance icons and sort of military applications. Even the likes of Bremont. I mean, Bremont's another story, but they don't talk about those things as much as they once did. I think we've got fatigue for military stuff in the world right now. We don't really want to hear more about it. What we do want to hear more about is Abbondanza, Italian lifestyle, Sprezzatura, all of that stuff. So I've probably butchered those two things, but those two terms. But we love Italy. We all love Italy. There's a little bit of an Italian in all of us. Find me someone that doesn't love a bit of pasta out there, and let's be honest, that's what the life that they create for themselves, the lifestyle, the carefree nature of style, of hands coming out here, of permatans, of linen shirts, of the sun and the Azzurri beach. That's it. We can all get behind that. So I'd like to see an advertising campaign from them this year on Eileen, or similar to like Peroni, the Peroni adverts, right? The Peroni lifestyle. Yes. I love that. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. So that's my call.
Soft top Maserati, low sunlight, linen shirts, Panerai on wrist. Exactly.
This is it. This is it. Boom.
It is.
This is it.
And then picture.
Tell me,
picture this one.
This one
with, let's say, it's got a sandwich dial.
Can you put that on the wrist, Tim, just so people can get a visual, right, of what?
Oh God!
Oh, he's clinging.
Right.
Oh, he's clinging.
No, don't say that. I love it. I'd absolutely wear it. This one's totally broken.
It's the ultimate non-compete as well. In many ways, like you've got a great dive watch, but you don't need to shout and scream about it.
Yes.
What else have you got there? Because let's just take 5-10 minutes just to wrap our heads around some other models that are available, by the way, at Subdial.
Yeah,
we didn't specify that.
No, but, I mean, we are lovers of Panerai, and I know not many dealers do take them in.
But they move for you.
Oh, they do.
You guys sell. You guys sell a lot of them.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not going to give you PAM numbers. I can talk about case sizes. It's a 44 millimeter luminol, and this is the E steel that we were talking about. This sort of recycled steel. For me, that shouldn't command a premium. I think most steel should be recycled if it wasn't already. But it's got all of those characteristics that you talk about as the quintessential Panerai. It's a black dial with the sandwich dial. I love that. The luminescence that comes through the top of the dial. This is a small seconds, but also a date complication. And you've got the water resistance clasp on the crown, the crown protector. It's you pick this up and it feels like you mean business. I can hear you clicking.
I'm clicking away. I'm forgetting. It's just so satisfying.
It's great, right?
It's so satisfying.
It feels like it means business. I love that thing. Anyway, and then moving on, this is the I can't remember. It's the Navy SEALs example.
Oh yeah,
It's actually one of my favourites. Other
that's
than
fairly
the
modern as well. That's come
yeah,
out.
it is.
That's
It's
come out
new,
recently.
and they're not particularly expensive.
It's got a bit of a
But
gradient
it's got a
dial.
grey sort of fume-looking dial with. I'm not a fan of Fotina,
No.
but it's got Fotina, and it's got a rotating bezel. Yeah, it's a cool thing.
So what they have done is link product to experience.
Yes.
And they have done that for the last couple of years.
Yes.
Where I think if you bought that watch or a similar model, you had the Italian military experience.
Yes.
We can go and train with them and other things, which is cool.
This is the Paneristi 15th anniversary, which is a very, very simple execution. It's hours and minutes, no seconds, printed dial, not sandwich dial.
Panerai again, and a polished case as well. That's not the 1950 case.
No.
That's a traditional case, and no running seconds, no sub seconds there either.
No.
Personally, I like the running seconds at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it's cool.
So you've got that layout, that 12,
I like
3
that
and 6.
Dauphine hand with the luminate. It's cool. It's a nice thing. You all right?
I am. I'm just looking. I'm just admiring it. Just admiring it.
Then we've got a Radiomir here. Obviously, this is a slightly more dressy example. I like the way the Cyclops is on the underside of the crystal because it leaves that smooth aesthetic, but you still get the magnification, which is it's kind of cool. It's got the small running seconds. It's got very large indices on this thing. And it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a chonker, but there is a time and a place.
Let's have a look at the dog.
It's big.
Big boy. It's a big boy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's a Carbotech here.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the Carbotech, I think on paper, I would love this if it weren't for 44 millimeters. It's got a brilliant sort of electric blue, sunburst blue dial. With a sandwich, it's got the luminescence on a dial on a lower level, which is lovely. The
sandwich style is still distinct. No one else does it. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think that came with a warranty of some kind, a very, very long warranty.
Oh,
and
yes.
Also, they innovated on the need for servicing and intervention and lubricants and other things. So there has been a push in recent years into not only the materials of the case, but looking at the aspects of the movement performance over time.
Yes.
Which is interesting, but it just maybe hasn't been as coherently delivered as it could be.
Yeah.
Can I have a look at that one, Tim? Sorry.
Yes, of course. Just while you're looking at it, there's one other thing that I wanted to mention about Panerai.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of people lost faith with the brand over a couple of really bad moves from them in press circles. There are the two examples that stand out to me are when the social media company reposted, or I think they just posted a fake
from a collector.
Yeah, and that is very damaging to the brand. Because obviously it's a brand that, unfortunately, like Cartier, have a lot of fakes out there, but you would expect the brand themselves to know the real McCoy, and that's a bad move. That's something that they need to fix. The other one is I think I'm right in saying this. Do you know it's the Brooklyn Bridge example that they brought out not too long ago as a commemorative piece, limited edition, of course. That was one where it had an ETA movement in it, but a solid case back, and it felt like it was rushed out to the point where the movement in the back was literally off the shelf. No finishing, no decoration of any sorts. I don't even think it was stamped Panerai. It was a 50 quid, 100 quid movement shoved in the back.
Why don't we just see a closed case back more often? That's my question. Because at the end of the day, this bronze one does actually have an open case back.
Yeah.
But to me, going back to the basics would suggest let's close them up.
Yeah.
If you're going to expose it, then you're almost exposing yourself to criticism.
But if you were going to open it, and you saw something that didn't even say Panerai, and it led you to believe that maybe it's even fake. I don't think like Rolex. You open up a Rolex, most of them are closed case backs, but you know that if you go inside, you're going to see some degree of finishing.
Apart from the platinum Daytona from last year, I think, which has the open case back now.
Yeah.
Bizarrely,
Yeah.
bizarrely, but yeah.
I do think if people are going to part with £10,000 for a steel watch, then there should be some degree of effort around craftsmanship, and not just riding on the characteristics of the case and the name and the history. There should be some work in there.
I think, and I agree on both counts. I think they've made a significant step forward on the social. I've been keeping a closer eye on the social since that incident last year, I think. And the social now is far better. The visuals they're using are much more design led. It's more considered. There's no more reposting. So that, I think, has been improved.
Yes,
which I'm excited about. And we can only hope that things go back to basics again, product wise. But I hear you, Tim. I hear you. I know, I'm keen to get people's comments below. I want to know what's going out there, because actually what really struck me about that other video on YouTube was the number of comments to start with was massive, and a lot of positive comments out there for where the brand actually is now. It's not like we need to do anything different. So really, really interesting time. We've all got a bit of love in our hearts.
Yeah, and the worst thing would be for that brand to fade away. I don't think anyone wants that. No. I mean, there might be some people out there that want that, but I have a real love for it. I just want them to focus on the sort of genuine, real characteristics that hark back to genuine history in the brand. I want that to come through as authentic, and not like someone's trying to spin a dollar or two.
I've heard, as a closing point, Mike Horn, the ambassador, South African ambassador, explorer, lovely bloke, by the way. He's incredibly cool. But I've heard as well, Johan Rupert, the chairman of Richemont, it's his favourite brand. Panerai is his favourite brand. Just as a side note, let's finish on that note, Tim. Thank you so much, guys. Really excited to get your thoughts.
Please don't send any hate mail from me wanting a 32mm.
We need to know what you think of Tim's suggestion of the 32mm submersible.
It comes from a place of love. It really does.
Thanks as always for joining.
Thank you.
Cheers.